Hey, what is up guys? JayzTwoCents here, and I'm bringing one of those rare gameplay commentaries on the channel. A lot of you guys really like this. Some of you people who've never seen a commentary are like, what the heck is this? Why are we watching gameplay? This is weird. Actually, this is kind of the norm, and every single year I like to do a video about AMD versus Intel, and since this is kind of the way I started my channel, I kind of like to go back to the nostalgic feel of gameplay commentaries. So I do this a couple times a year now where I do AMD versus Intel to bring you guys information on which processors are right for you and try and keep the information as current as possible. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into some Battlefield 4 here, playing Engineer class with a pretty specific loadout, specifically for myself when it comes to Engineer class. I love my MTAR, I love my SMA, but today we're gonna go ahead and use the SRA rocket, which turns out to be pretty beneficial. We're also gonna do some main battle tank action here. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into October 2014 AMD versus Intel and how to choose the right processor for you. All right, so let's face it, when it comes to trying to pick the right processor, it's very difficult in this age because there are some very biased reviewers out there. And let's be honest, we're all biased to a little degree. Now with this, I wanna say this. Take my opinion here with a grain of salt and compare and contrast it to other opinions that you're hearing and try and formulate your own opinion based on a lot of different people's point of views, and only then can you start to put together the big picture of what's going to work for you. Now I have my preferences, but I do the best I can to remain unbiased, but let's face it, we all do have a little bit of bias in us, and I am real enough to admit that. Now, one other thing I want to also stress here is you're going to hear a very common thread in this video from every other video I have ever made that talks about how to choose a particular product, whether it be a power supply or a CPU in the past or a graphics card or RAM. The common thread being, what are you doing with your computer? Now that's a hard question for a lot of people to answer. A lot of people are building their very first computer and they have no idea what they can do with their computer. So how are they supposed to say what they're gonna do with it? So they're afraid they're gonna buy a CPU and they're gonna get the wrong CPU and it's gonna keep them from doing what it is they wanna do. But here's the reality when it comes to that. Every CPU can do what any other CPU can do. They all just do it at a little bit different speeds. That's it. I don't care if we're talking about the X99 5960X or the FX 4100, which is
just a little bitty baby little quad CPU on the FX side, which, you know, it's not very strong, but it tries. It's like the little engine that could.
They both can do the exact same thing. It's just one's gonna do it better than the other. So don't be worried that you're gonna buy a CPU that simply can't do something, because it will. It's just going to depend on how fast it is, really. It's not like the program's going to pop up and say, sorry, bro, you can't do this function because you didn't buy an Intel 5960X. Better luck next time. Wah, wah, wah. Yeah, that's not going to happen, I promise you. AMD versus Intel. Well, let's go ahead and face it. The reality, it's a lot of R's, the RRR, realistic reality here is that Intel is faster than AMD on just about every front at this juncture when it comes to the technology. Now I last did this video in January, and since then Intel has launched several new CPUs in a brand new platform. AMD on the other hand has not really launched anything but a few refreshes of an existing platform that has already been around for going on 3 years, that being the FX line. Now they came out with some new FX 8350 and 8320 style processors where they're a little more efficient, but they are no more powerful. Yeah, it's kind of disappointing to see that AMD is not coming out with brand new architecture or groundbreaking technologies, but guys, let's face it, AMD is not trying to do that. They are really trying to improve the APU, which is going to take quite a while to get up to the current standard of what standalone CPUs are being offered from Intel, so it's going to take some time. Now with that said, this is not a fanboy comment, this is just a realistic fact. Intel is faster than AMD on every front. But that's not to say AMD is something that you should overlook. In fact, in my opinion, I more often than not will recommend AMD CPUs for people looking to build a very budget-oriented CPU or computer tower, because I feel if you're doing gaming, You need to be putting the majority of your money into your graphics card. Your graphics card should be the single-handed most expensive piece inside your computer, hands down, period. I don't care who you are. The reality is, if you are a gamer, the GPU needs to be, once again, the most expensive part in your computer. End of story. Dot. Period. Ship it. Yes, that is my opinion on that. Now, the AMD CPUs are still very strong. The 8350 came out in 2012. And folks, if you haven't looked at a calendar lately, we are moving into 2015. It is getting a little bit old, but it is still one of those horses that just won't die and it just keeps going. So the 8350 is still my go-to processor at the $200 range when it just comes to all-out value. Now, there's a lot of debate of whether or not it's faster or slower than its Intel counterpart at the same price range, which would be the 4690K from Intel, which is a new CPU, by the way. It launched in June of 2014. Both are great CPUs, but Intel's a little more power efficient and a little bit more powerful on some applications, but the 8350 beats it in some others. They trade a lot of blows. And that's the kind of thing you're going to notice now when it comes to the lower-end CPUs. Now, I would recommend going with an 8350 if you are an AMD fan. Now, if you're not and you have absolutely no bias, my personal opinion would be to go with the 4690K, because I feel that Intel's algorithm, that doesn't make sense. Intel's architecture is going to be a little bit more tailored to and biased when it comes to the developers of multi-threaded applications. Now, multi-threaded applications are becoming more the norm, where single core performance is not fantastic on AMD, and a lot of these programs are going to start looking to do multi-threading functionality inside of their APIs, which is going to say the more cores, the more threads, the better. Now, that's why I would say the 8350 is pretty strong if you're going to be doing like live streaming or live game streaming or recording or rendering videos, and you had to choose between the 4690K or the 8350. I really feel like it's a toss-up. I've owned both CPUs. I started this channel with an AMD 8350 and it served me very well. And I publicly said moving from the 8350 over to the 3770K back in 2013 was the most costly, non-beneficial move I ever made with a CPU. So that's saying something. I noticed absolutely no difference whatsoever with day-to-day processing power or gaming experiences or even rendering experiences when moving from one to the other. I mean, the Intel rendered a little bit faster, but if we're talking a difference of 2 minutes, yeah, if you're rendering videos as much as I am, 2 minutes could really add up over time. But you know, for the the average person, maybe doing 1 or 2 videos a week, you're not going to, you know, 4 minutes a week is not going to add up to a whole lot of time for you. Now, like the 5960X, which I'm currently using, which is rendering videos at 3 times real-time rate, which means I can render a 12-minute video in 4 minutes, that actually matters. But the 5960X, that's not a processor I would really even recommend for the average consumer. I mean, it's got very expensive motherboard requirements, very expensive DDR4 requirements. I don't even really want to include it in this video. I kind of regret that I even brought it up right now. But yeah, we'll do a separate video in the future about X99 and 5960X, because I get a lot of people saying, should I upgrade from the 4790K to the X99 5960X? Oh my gosh, I feel like I should have done that. And it's like, well, what are you doing with your computer? They say things like, oh, I'm just gaming. Oh yeah, bro, you're not going to notice any differences. In fact, games tend to be slightly faster sometimes on the 4790K than the 5960X. So once again, the CPUs are also tailored to a certain function. 5960X, 16 threads, absolute rendering beast. And I went with it because I am obviously rendering videos like this one, which you're watching right now. Yeah, so AMD is not something I feel that people should be overlooking. And I'm saying that loud and proud. There's a lot of people who are going to be fanboys of Intel and just be livid that I even said consider getting an AMD CPU, because they're going to be like, no, bro, Intel is the best. You got to go Intel. You got to go Intel. Oh my God, AMD is garbage. And they're like pooping all over themselves while they're saying it. And I really hate that mentality. I don't like fanboyism. It only makes it harder for newcomers to the PC community to try and decide what to buy. So if you're finding yourself listening to this video right now and you're on the edge and you just don't know what to get, and you're looking at your shopping carts and you're looking at PC Part Picker and you just can't decide, I'm on a limited budget. I've only got $700. Should I get the i5, 3200 or whatever it is? I'm sorry, guys. I don't know a lot of the i5 numbers by heart. I'm a little bit of a snob in the sense that I have, i7 stuff. But again, that I would never say, go get an i7, brah, and get a cheap GPU. No, that just doesn't make any sense. But if you're finding yourself on the fence thinking about getting a lower end i5 because you just are scared of the AMD 8350 or the 5970 or whatever it is, the 5 gigahertz CPU on AMD's side, don't let people scare you away from that. There are fanboys out there that are going to do nothing but try and steer you towards a brand out of blind loyalty rather than being realistic about performance of these CPUs. I mean, CPUs have come a long way in the last 10 years. Some people don't know this. I worked at CPU. Yes, I worked at CPU. No, I worked at Circuit City in 2000. And I was there when the very first AMD 1 gigahertz CPU shipped. They were the first to hit the 1 gigahertz mark. And it was great. Everyone was just loving the fact that technology was moving fast. But the reality here is that technology is not moving as fast as it used to when it comes to CPUs because we're hitting the limits of where we can go on the current, silicon or the structure that makes up the CPU. And it's really making it difficult for people to decide. If you're a gamer, buy Intel, be loud, be proud. If you're a live streamer, buy something like the 8350 and be proud. If you're the kind of person that's like me, where you're willing to spend more and say, I will pay gladly 20 to 30% more to simply say I have the best, then by all means, go with Intel. That would be really the only thing I could suggest. I mean, there are no other options, AMD or Intel. But just, if you hear one message in this video and you're new to buying a computer or you're looking to build your first computer, do not be afraid of going AMD. In fact, look at their graphics cards. Their graphics cards are an amazing offering. In fact, for the longest time, they were just stomping all over NVIDIA. I mean, the 7000 series, the 7970 gigahertz edition was destroying the 680 back in 2012. And everything about the competition between AMD and NVIDIA was just great for the consumer. So don't let people scare you. Make sure you get what's right for you. And please, listen to as many people as you can when it comes to suggestions that are reputable reviewers and come up with a decision that makes sense for you. Guys, this has been JayzTwoCents. Thanks for listening to this video today. Go ahead and ask your questions on Twitter to me directly if you have any questions, or head on over to Facebook. I'm over there as well. And as always, guys, I will see you in the next one.